Okay, so this is the next video in our continuation of our AWS series. And in this video, we will do one case study. So till now, we have explored a couple of services like EC2 services. We have explored the Lambda. We have explored DynamoDB. We have explored the CloudWatch. We have explored. So now we will do one case study using Python code, which involve all these services, right? So what exactly we have to do? We have to spin up one EC2 instance. We have to create one DynamoDB table. We have to create one Lambda function. And why we have to create all this? So we will, what we want, so our requirement is we want to fetch our EC2 details, like what is my instance ID, what is my instance type, whether it is t2.micro or t2.large. I want to fetch the EC2 details, and like what is its private IP address, what is public IP address, what is it DNS, and what are the like various fields. I want to fetch the EC2 details. Once I fetch the EC2 details, I want to store those EC2 details into the DynamoDB table. So how I can achieve this? So one approach is like just spin up the EC2 instance, manually note down all the things, and like manually did the entry into the DynamoDB. But we don't want to perform the manual action. So what we want is like we want to create our Python code which will do all these things, and we want to run our Python code. So one option is to run the Python code within the EC2 only, but we will use the Lambda as a function, serverless function. So we will run our Python code on the Lambda. So what this Lambda will do is it will like go to the EC2. It will fetch the instance ID, instance type, private IP. It will take the response back. Now it will store the result into the DynamoDB. Along with that, we know a Lambda also generate the CloudWatch logs. So we will see whether the CloudWatch logs are getting generated or not. So in this, we will use the Python as a code, and Python 3.8 version we will use, right? But a couple of things like we also need, which we see as we like proceed. So what we want, so first we want EC2, because first we want the EC2. If the EC2 doesn't exist, then like how we can get this detail, instance ID, instance type, private IP, right? So first we have to spin up the EC2 instance. So open the AWS and go to the EC2, and all these services are free of cost, because we already know EC2 is free of cost till 750 hours per month. DynamoDB is also free of cost. I think I forget, like let me check AWS free tier. How much amount is free? I'm not sure. It is 750 GB or DynamoDB. 25 GB. So 25 GB is free, and Lambda is also free because 1 million requests are free, right? So we can hit 1 million free requests Lambda, and that is per month. 1 million, which is more than enough for our hands-on, because maybe we will hit 10 or 20 requests, that's it, right? So all these like services are free, and we don't need to worry about the charges. But make sure, like once we did the hands-on, we should clear the resources. So we have to spin up the EC2 instance. So go to the EC2. Right now I don't have any EC2 instance which is up and running, because it is in the terminated state. All right, and after the couple of seconds, maybe after a couple of minutes, it will also like gone away. So we have to launch the instance, and we will use the free tier only. So free tier, so select t2.micro, because it is the free tier only. Instance type, we will spin how many number of instance? We only need one instance, right? Any number of instances you want, because but even we want like whatever the number of instances we are running, it will fetch all the details of all the instance and it store into the DynamoDB. We can do that as well, but as of now we will look into the one EC2 instance. So we will spin up one EC2 instance, and into the default network, default subnet, everything is default. add storage. So leave the storage as is, that is the root storage 8 GB. Add tags. So we will add the tag. So let's give the name my EC2 instance and add the tag as well. These are not mandatory, but it is generally recommended to do that. Security group. So even though we don't need to SSH into that security group, and also we don't need the like HTTP, because we are not spinning up any website, but still, like, just for the safer side, not for the safer side, but if we want to, if we think we have to log in into the EC2, so we need the SSH. So from anywhere, so create a new security group. So my security group, my SG, review and launch. Let's create a key pair, create a new key pair, and my key pair, download key pair and launch instances. So it is in pending state, it will get launched, but meanwhile let's so one service is being launched, so that is fine. Now other is we need the DynamoDB. So it will take a couple of minutes to make it up and running. Meanwhile, let's spin up the DynamoDB, which is the NoSQL database. So go to the DynamoDB. So we have to create the table. So create a table, give name my DynamoDB table, and like as we see in the like earlier video, we have to give some primary key and primary key as the part of the two keys. One is the partition key and one is the sort key. Partition key is mandatory, sort key is like optional, and both are the part of the primary keys. Even here it is, you mentioned it is the part of the primary key, it is also the part of the primary key. So what details we want to store? So we want to store the account ID. So account ID is like in which account we are using, that is the root account. So this account ID, we want to store this, and we want to store the instance ID. So account ID is the general, it is not related to EC2, it is not related to DynamoDB, it is related to my like AWS account. Instance ID is EC2 instance ID, instance type is EC2 instance ID, private IP is what is the private IP of EC2. So we need all this. So make like account ID is always like common. So let's make it as a partition key, because let's suppose if we have to run this code in multiple accounts, then we will like partition it by account ID and sort by maybe instance ID. So let's sort by instance ID, though we are like storing only data for only for one EC2. So instance ID, so that's it, leave the default setting as is. Let's like add a tag and owner. So add a tag, create table. So table will be created, and it is purely the serverless table. Automatically everything will be provisioned, so it will also take some time. Now it is running, so you could see we have the private IP address, and this address we want to store into my database, and instance type I want to store into my database, instance ID I want to store into my database, and account ID I want to store into my database. How I will fetch this, we will see. Okay, so these two things are done. So if we open it, so explore the table items. Right now we don't have anything. Items returned is 0. There is nothing into that. All right. Okay. So what next? So EC2 is ready. DynamoDB is ready. Now we have to create the Lambda function, and we have to write our Python code. So go to the Lambda function. Right now we don't have any function. Let's create a function. So we have 4 options. We will write our code from the scratch. Give the function name my Lambda function, and as I told you, we have to use the Python 3.8. So runtime is Python 3.8. Okay, and in the permission, because even though we need a couple of permission, But one default permission which is needed is like Lambda will write the logs into the CloudWatch. So if one service want to access any other service, so that service need the access for the particular other service. So let's suppose the Lambda has to write the something into the CloudWatch. So whatever the operation Lambda needs to perform, it needs the access. Similarly, whatever the Lambda needs the like operation into the EC2 and the DynamoDB, it needs the access. So by default, like CloudWatch logs, if we like go with this option, create a new role, it will like attach the policy with the default permission, and the default permissions are these permission. Like it will create a log group, and it will like create a log stream and put the log events. So create a new role with the basic Lambda permission, and under the advanced I can leave everything as is and go to create function. It will take a couple of seconds because at the backend it has to create the IAM role as well. So let me show you. If I go to the IAM, so Lambda function has been created. Right now it is blank, no code is there. Lambda function.py is like no code, nothing is there. It is a total empty code. And here under the roles, we have 11 roles. So this is the latest one, which is just recently created, my Lambda function role. And if you see the permissions, so only have CloudWatch permission, like create log group, because within the CloudWatch, we have to first create the log group. Under the log group, we have to create the stream. Under the stream, we have to put the events. So all the permission like is there. All right. So that's it. So now it can write the logs into the CloudWatch. Okay, so that is fine. Okay, so let's delete this. We don't need the JSON. Let's delete everything because we will write our code from scratch here. So this is a Lambda handler, and we know that two arguments will be passed. One is the event, one is the context. Okay, so first what we need, like within the Python code, what exactly we want to achieve? We want basically write some code which will fetch these details like account ID. So let's first focus on the account ID. So account ID is generic. It doesn't related with the EC2. It doesn't relate with DynamoDB. Nothing related to that account ID. So there is a client, that is a SNS client. All right. If you open that, note the SNS, STS, sorry. STS AWS Boto3. So STS Boto3. So STS is basically secure token services. So it is a client. So using this client, we can fetch a multiple details related to our account. So one option is get caller identity. So if you click on this, so if we call this option, it will return a response, and the responses look like this. What is the user ID? What is the account ID? And what is the ARN? And we need the account ID. So we can use this function, get caller identity. And this function is the part of the STS client. And here we have to use the Boto3. So Boto3 is the Python module. So we have to first import the Boto3 and we have to use that. So go to the top, import Boto3. So Boto3 is basically in the AWS using the Python code. If you have to access any service using the code, you have to use the Boto3. Okay. Now, which service we have to like using which service we can get the account ID. So using the STS, so we have to create the STS client, low level client, Boto3 dot client, and which client? STS. So STS client has been ready. So first we will fetch the account ID. All right. So response is equal to STS client dot get caller identity, because we know we have under the STS we have one function that is the second get caller identity, and if we call this function it will return some response which will give us the account ID. So let's print the response. We will do step by step. So 1 minute. So that's fine. So let's deploy it and let's test it. So we have to create a new event, event Lambda or something, any name we can give. So we have to pass some key value pair because by default it needs the event, even though we are not using that. So let's test it. So now it is giving me response that the user ID is like which user, that is a Lambda function. Account is this. So it is giving me the dictionary, and within the dictionary I need only this field. So I can easily access this field, account ID like 7466 ending with 7466. So I need this field. So I can easily get this field, right? So I have to change my function. So now account ID is equal to response, and within the response which field I need account, because it is a dictionary. So how to access the dictionary? Using this. All right. So if you print account ID is account ID. So we have to use the F string. So redeploy it and test it. So now we can see Lambda function has been started. It is printing the account ID and it get finished. And also we can check our CloudWatch logs, because we already have the permission to create the log stream, and we know using which name like CloudWatch watch logs get generated. So by default it generated the AWS Lambda and the function name. So we have deployed our function 2 times. So that's why 2 streams has been created. We have to check the latest stream. So in the latest stream, we see our logs, start request ID, account ID, and it's finished. Only this we have achieved. So we have achieved account ID. So let's first collect this information, then we will store. Account ID is done. Now we have to fetch the instance ID, instance type, and the private IP. But for that, we have to access our EC2 service, right? So let me close this. So ST is done now. So go to the Lambda function. Now to access the other information, instance ID, instance type, private IP, we have EC2 client only give this information. So we have to create the EC2 client. Boto3 dot client and EC2. So EC2 client only give this information. So fetch the account ID. Now fetch the instance details, or you can say properties or anything, right? Okay, so we have to check is there any option within the EC2 client, right? So we have one option, that is the describe instances. So client dot describe instance. If you go to the Boto3 EC2 Boto3 and is slow. So there are a couple of functions, but if you go with the describe, 1 second, describe instances. So if describe instance is one of the function, what it will do is it will describe the specified instances or all instances. If we will mention any argument, then it will give the output only for those are instance. Otherwise, whatever the instance it is running, whether it's intermediate state, whether it is running, whether it is stopped state, it will give the details of all those instances. All right. So we can use this function and sorry. Describe instances. Yeah. So we have to use this function. So client dot describe instances, and we can pass particular instance. Otherwise, we can just normally pass that particular function, and it will like give the output. So let's try that. So response is equal to EC2 client. So spelling of client is wrong. All right. Describe instances, and which instance we have to like I don't want to like get the details of all the instances. Only I want to get the details of my instance. So it is basically a list. We can like provide a list. So it is basically a kind of list. So what is my EC2 instance and what is my ID? Instance ID. So copy. So let's paste it. That is fine. Now try to print the response. What response we will get? So whether this will work or not? This will not work. Why this will not work? Because now we are running the code here and we are trying to access the EC2. What we are doing is from Lambda, using the EC2 client, we are trying to access some information from the EC2. But Lambda has only permission for the CloudWatch logs. Lambda doesn't have permission for the EC2. So first we have to give the permission for the EC2, like which operation we want to perform. So we want to perform the describe instances operation. So let's first try it, whether it will fail or not. So test. You could see we are getting the error unauthorized operation because Lambda doesn't have access to do the describe instances operation. So we have to first like give like attach this permission. So go to the IAM, and right now we have this policy. We have only this access. We don't have any EC2 access. So edit it. And add additional permission. Which service now it want to access? EC2 service. Okay. And which action it want to perform? Describe instances. Describe instances. Describe instances. That's it. And review policy and save changes. So if you go to the roles and go to the my Lambda, now if we expand this, earlier we have only like create log group and create log stream and put log events. Now we have the EC2 describe instances allow as well. So we have attached this policy. Now if I rerun my code, test, it ran fine. It doesn't give any error and it returned me some response. A lot of response it give me. So let me go to the CloudWatch logs. So let me open this. It returned me. So first it give me the client error. Now it give me this response. So a long response it gave me. So I let me copy it and let me paste it JSON formatter. Okay, so it's some error. That's fine. So it is giving me some response. So what are the keys? So okay, so it is giving me a response. So whether in the response, whatever the details I want, whether it exists or not. So what details I want? Account ID we already found. Instance ID, instance type, and private IP. We want these details. Okay. So we have first key reservation, and under the reservation, it is a long list. So it is basically a long list. And under the list, there are further a dictionary, groups, instances, and under the instances, again a list. It has like image ID. So we have the instance ID, that is fine. Instance type, that is also fine. We need the instance ID. We need the instance type, that is also fine. We have the private IP address, that is also fine. We need only these three information: instance ID, instance type, and private IP. And all these three information are the value for this key, instances key. And instances key is the value for the reservation. So this is basically dictionary. So first we want the reservations, then we want the instances. So first we need the reservations. So right now we are getting this response, but we need the so you can say, okay, let's do the response. We need reservations only. It has two keys, so let's check whether it has two keys or only one key. For key, or I think print response dot keys, deploy test. So it has two keys, reservations and response metadata, right? So it has only two keys, reservations and response metadata. So till this point it has one key, and till like response data is one the other key. Response data is basically the header information. We don't need this, we need only this. So whatever the information we have, it is only under this key, that is the reservation. So first we have to go to the reservation, then the value should be the whole list, then we will go through the list, and then we will find this instance. Okay, so we want only reservation. So let me go again. We want only this field, reservations. Response is equal to response of the reservation. So now we have excluded the metadata, but reservation again, it is a very large value, right? We want only instance, because whatever our detail, it is under the instance only. So instance key only, because instance ID is there, instance type is there, and so many other information like private IP address is there, public DNS name is there. So some public IP address is there. So whatever the information we want, we can access. So we have to, now we get this list. So this is a list. So if I can't access the instance as it is, so I have to run a loop within the list. So this is a list, and okay, so this is a list. Okay, so now we have the list. So for I in response and instance properties. So it is basically instance properties. So I of, so what value we want? Instances. All right, we can see instance properties. So whether it we have fetch or not. So let's print instances properties. So let's redeploy it and test it. So yes, we have get only the particular field. So under the instances, we have the AMI launch index, image ID. We have sorry, and we have found only image ID, instance ID, and now we can run a loop on this, and we can found instance ID, instance type, and a private key, right? So we have this. Now run a loop. So for X in instance properties. So what details we want? So first we want is instance ID. So instance ID is equal to X of instance ID. Fine. What else we want? We want instance type. Instance type is equal to X of instance type. What else we want? We want the private IP address as well. So private IP address. So private IP address is this name. So we want the private IP address as well. Private IP address X of private IP address. So that's it, done. So let's print. Instance ID is not instances, it's only instance ID. So instance properties. And instance type. So it should be instance type and private IP address. Okay, so that's it. Redeploy and test it. So now we have all the information: account ID, we have the instance ID, we have the instance type, we have the private IP address. So let's cross verify. So it is 172.31.43.115. So if you go to the EC2, 172, 31, 43, and 15. So everything is like looks okay. All right. So what else we want? So now we fetch the information from the EC2. We have this information here. Now we have to store this information to the DynamoDB. So if we have to access the DynamoDB, we need the DynamoDB client. So we need the DynamoDB client. So DB client boto3 dot client DynamoDB. All right. So we need the DynamoDB client. And is there any function into the DynamoDB client? So DynamoDB client has one function, that is the put item. We have to basically put the item. So put item boto3. So where is the put item boto3? Yeah. So we have put item. There is a one function, and here it is mentioned put item in the HD or Python 3. Python, yes, we are looking for the Python only. Okay, so it will create a new item, or even if the item already exists, it will replace it. Right. And okay, so what is the syntax? Basically, we want the syntax. The syntax is client dot put item. Okay, fine. So our client is DB client, so it will return some response. So client dot put item. Okay, and then it asks, we have to give the table name under, like, to which table we are like we want to store that. So what is our table name? You remember, like, we created the table, my DynamoDB table. So we need this table name. So table name. Okay, so that is, and what details we want. So what item we want, and item is in the form of a, you can say, a kind of a dictionary or a JSON object. So we want to store the item. So what item it will store? It will store the item into the form of a, like a key value pair. So first is the string, and then string is further contained, like as you can say, a dictionary only. So first we have to store the account ID. Account ID, okay, and account ID is further a dictionary. You could see, like key, and the value is again a dictionary. And here we can like type string, and then or you can mention even s, or either you can mention string. So it's up to you. So we can mention so s, because when we insert the item na, so let me show you as well. So where it is, even if you manually try to insert the item na, so create 1 second, explore table item and create item. It will ask you multiple things. One is the, like, attribute, then value, and it asks the type. So if you try to add new attribute, it will ask the type. This, so which type it is. The same thing it is like asking here. The same thing it is trying to ask here. Okay, you want to insert the account ID, but it is of which type? S type. And what is the value? its value is account ID, comma. Then we have to store the instance ID. Okay, it is also of the string type and instance ID. And we have to store the instance type. We already fetch all these details. We are just storing it. Instance type. Fine. Then private IP address. Private IP address. It is also a string. Private IP. Sorry. Private IP address. So that's it. But whether it will work or not, it will not work. It will give the error because let me show you. Let me close all this. Why it will give the error? Now Lambda is trying to perform some operation on the DynamoDB. So Lambda first, so whatever the role attached with the Lambda, that is trying to perform some operation on the DynamoDB. So that role now need the access for the put item as well. So, but first let's try whether it will actually give the error or not. So deploy and test. You could see access denied because we don't have error, like we don't have the put item operation access. So let's go to the again the IAM. IAM already open. Edit it. Add the DynamoDB put item policy with our existing role. So add additional permission. Choose a service. DynamoDB. And which option be like which like action, sorry, add item, and on which table we can specify the table. So we can go to the DynamoDB and no here in the DynamoDB tables. If you open it, if you go to the overview and where it is under the additional info, there should be some ARN. So here it is ARN. Just copy it and specify the resource, add ARN. So under the ARN, just mention ARN. So add it and review policy. So save the changes. Changes had been done. Now go to the roles, whether the policy has been attached or not. So expand it. So now it has the describe instances, put item, create log group, create log stream. Where it is? Looks it did not attach. So let's try to attach again. No, here it is attached. So yeah. So DynamoDB. So we have the put item. Yeah, put item is attached here, DynamoDB. So it is attached. So now if we try to rerun it, so when lambda function test, there is no error. So it means now it should store the result. So if I go here and if I go to explore table items, so it's showing 0. Let me refresh it. Now we have one item. If you click on it, account ID is there, instance ID is there, private IP is same, instance type is same. So let's do a couple of more things. And if we try to print the response, so here it is a response. Print a response. So let's try to print the response. Deploy, test. So you could see response is returning some response metadata, and under the response metadata there is HTTP status code 200. So if it is 200, then it is success. So we will just print something. So we will check if response of response metadata and then response of response metadata. So first it will check the response metadata. Under the response metadata, it will check the HTTP status code. HTTP status code is equal to 200. Then we like you can say print item details has been added. Details has been added to the DynamoDB table. And like let's try to do in the try and acceptable, because if there is an error, we will like catch that. Try accept exception as E, print E. It will like print the exception as well if there is any. So redeploy it. Now test it. So we have everything ready. And if we go to our table, so it definitely overwrite it. Nothing special. Everything is same. But if you go to the CloudWatch logs, log group, so see the latest logs. Now we have our Lambda started. It account ID is printed, instance ID is printed, instance type is printed, details has been added to the. So now it is printing the mention that details has been added to the DynamoDB table, and our Lambda function has been finished. So that's it. So we have like did a small use case study, because we have explored all these functions: EC2, DynamoDB, Lambda, CloudWatch logs. So I thought like better like do some kind of practical as well. So now we have done. So let's terminate everything. So terminate the EC2 instance. Okay, it will be done. Go to the tables, delete the DynamoDB table, and type delete. And what else? Delete the log groups. Delete log groups. Log groups has been deleted. Delete the IM. We don't need the IM roles no more. If we need further, then we can recreate it. Delete. Now we have the 10 rows. So that is also done. That is also done. And we have to delete our Lambda function, because now we don't need the Lambda function. So functions, click, actions, delete, delete. So Lambda function has been deleted. Now we don't have any functions. So let's close this tab. So it's terminated. So a couple of things, because we created the security group. So let's delete that security group as well. Delete security group. That's done. We also created the key pair. So let's delete that as well. Delete. Delete. So that's it. So that's the end of the video. So I will try to provide the particular Lambda code on my GitHub repo if you want. Otherwise, you can pause the video and try to copy it, or even though like even try to write it from your own. Now we know, like, because we did everything step by step. So that's it. That's the end of the video. Thank you. Bye bye.